Jackson trying to escape and run for it, and he's got it and more. Lamar Jackson down the sideline. Will they give it to him? They will. Touchdown, Baltimore.
And with 1:17 left to play on Wild Card Weekend, the Hayes in the barn.
Oh my God! I wish you guys could. I wish we had a camera in here so you could see what we're doing. We're just a bunch of clowns in here.
How much fun is that?
All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast. It is Thursday, May 27th. My name is Jake Luke, and myself and Spencer Nathaniel Schultz are coming to you guys. We don't really have much of a set schedule. Typically, it's usually just an early week and a late week episode, but I think we do usually tend towards the Friday drops, doing it a little bit early on a Thursday this week because we're getting out a little early. You know, school's getting out a little early here for Memorial Day weekend. I'm going to be out of town on Friday, so here we are in the studio on this Thursday afternoon, just chopping it up. How's it going, bud?
Going well. Yeah, we're almost to that awesome Memorial Day weekend where it feels like everybody's life is just a little better from there on out. It's the marker of not living in at least North Carolina or more south, and summer's here, so I'm excited. Going to have a fun little vacation. We both have some beach time plans. We're excited about that. And it's almost June, you know, season at the same time around the corner, OTAs popping off, all that good stuff. So happy to be here, excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. And OTAs are popping off. I mean, it's looking pretty fun out there, to be honest. We saw the rookies getting out there. I think maybe that was 1 week, 2 weeks ago, maybe both at this point, who could say, for rookie mini camps. And now you get the real things going on, the big mini camps, I guess you could call them. A little bit of a fun turn of phrase there, a little oxymoron, where all the stars are getting out there now. Lamar's getting out there in the mix, having a little bit of fun, catching punts and doing all that kind of stuff. And also love to see the media was out there. I saw our boy Bobby was out there taking some pictures. Jonas Schaefer, another friend of the show, out there, kind of mixing it up. So it's good to see training camp will likely be back to normal because it looks like minicamp kind of is as well at this point.
Yeah, I got to see some guys on the podium as well. Rashad Bateman did have he left practice, but Harbaugh immediately commented on it and basically said it was just some muscle soreness. The Ravens wanted to be precautious. They don't want any lingering soft tissue stuff, and it's difficult. These rookies, you know, I've mentioned it before. They come in or they end their college season, their collegiate season, their final season, then they and pretty much, you know, immediately go into combine and pro day prep. Then they get drafted. They have to fly into a new city, get acquainted with that, get set up with an apartment or a hotel for the time being. Then they have rookie OTAs. Then they have OTAs after rookie OTAs. Then after that, they finally get a month off, which isn't, you know, a ton for the body to recover for how much they put it through. I mean, that pro day and that combine prep is very extensive. And then they, you know, it's like they have a month off, but it's actually getting an actual apartment set up, you know, maybe getting your family out there to help you and dealing with all of that stuff and all of the newfound, you know, monetary bullshit that people have to go through and trying not to fuck that up, or some of them, I guess, just do. But then they immediately have training camp after that month is over, and then it's a season. So you really don't have an off season that rookie year. And I'm glad to see the Ravens erring on the side of caution. It doesn't sound like it's anything too bad. So, let him sit it out a little bit. We think he's pretty pro ready anyway. Let him get some mental reps in, get him in the classroom. And if he has a full training camp, then I'm sure he'll be good to go on that front.
Yeah, when that tweet initially came out, I think Jeff was the first one who put it out there. It's always fun reading those because he starts with like, he left the field, and it's like, oh, fuck. And you read that first half, and like your heart kind of sinks a little bit. And then he obviously ends it with something to the effect of it didn't look too serious. So I was glad to see that. Glad to see him out there and practicing, I guess, with Lamar. I didn't really see any videos of those two tossing it back and forth together, but it does seem like they are probably in the building together at this point and probably getting to know one another and chop it up a little bit as well, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels good to have everybody in there. And I know Harbaugh was really excited. He's a big OTA guy, as anyone who hasn't heard can probably guess. Harbaugh loves him some practice, some OTAs, all that stuff comes with the territory of being born into that Harbaugh bloodline, which you got to just love. But Harbaugh didn't really have anything too major to say. It was, nothing, no big takeaways there. I was watching, I was trying to pump out some quotes for the good people during the same time. And he didn't really touch on a bunch. He was like, oh, what do you hope Lamar works on? He was like, footwork and fundamentals and taking snaps and stuff like that. And the Ravens have been fined for taking OTAs too seriously and getting too physical at OTAs, which is obviously, again, part of that Harbaugh bloodline. So hopefully they're taking it easy, but getting some good reps in and keeping everybody healthy. The only thing he basically gave updates, Bradley Bozeman's going to be the center. Doesn't feel like that's much of a surprise, but it's official. And then he said, Nick Boyle, I had, quote, he looks good. I really can't wait to see him out there practicing. I will probably keep him out of these sessions, but man, he's chomping at the bit. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, I kind of didn't understand why the whole Bozeman thing was kind of being treated as this state secret with them amidst the offseason, even after they had signed Zeitler and even after Villanueva came in. I think they were still
even after they don't draft the center.
Yeah, they were holding the line on that forever. And then Harbaugh comes out today and says that. I saw you live tweeting it a little bit, so I think I might have seen yours first. And putting it out there finally that Bradley Bozeman is going to be the starting center. So I think we've done this before, but it does feel like now it's going to be Stanley, Cleveland, Bozeman, Zeitler, Villanueva, or Phillips there at right tackle.
Yeah, the only other thing I could think is maybe Phillips battles into left guard. I don't think they're very high on Powers. I don't think Powers was good at all. He was average at best, I guess, looking back on last season. And he just doesn't have that frame or that body. Bredesen doesn't have very long arms. He actually has some of the shortest arms of any drafted lineman ever. So maybe Phillips and Cleveland battling for that left guard spot is the only one I can think of. Feels like Villanueva is going to come in and take that right tackle spot ultimately. So, yeah, then that was it from Harbaugh. On the other fronts, my favorite quote of the day, my favorite interview actually was Chuck Clark. And he's just very professional, very, he gives off 40-year-old grown-ass man vibes. He's like Marquise Brown's confident. He had a lot of confident responses, but Chuck Clark is just worried about being a professional and gives off an air of a champion.
If your name is Chuck Clark, you're probably going to be acting like a 40-year-old dude who's got his shit together.
Yeah, and he is turning into a real leader on this team, and you can just tell that. One of the most fun bits of what he had to say, which I wrote, Chuck Clark was watching the rookie minicamp practice tape like a true savage. He had thoughts on Ardarius Washington based on the fact that he was watching rookie minicamp tape. And he said he's making breaks on the ball. He's around the ball a lot. So the takeaway there, sure, Ardarius Washington, but that Chuck Clark is so dialed in that he is scouring through the, practice tape of rookie minicamp and has, a note to make on a player. So that's why you talk about a coach on the field, and that's why the Ravens love him so much. He is extremely detail-oriented and a professional. And you could tell all of that just in that one response and him giving maybe 20 words.
Yeah, definitely. He feels like a guy who I think we had even said prior to it happening that he should have been in line for an early extension. They went ahead and did that. But as much as people talked about safety being a need over the offseason, and I understood why, and I understand the fact that, they didn't get that rangy type of player that maybe people were hoping for because him and Elliott's skill sets don't necessarily complement one another. They're kind of a little redundant in some ways. He still feels like a really good player to me that is still kind of in ascending property. So I like the idea that he's just still there. He's going to be there for the long term, and he's got room to grow, it seems like. And it seems like with the mindset that he has, he's on the right track to do so.
Right. I thought he had a really good year. I thought both of them had a really good year. And that's why it was interesting to see Earl Thomas come into this equation, because it felt like Wink's defense, he likes to be that all 11 guys can blitz kind of defense. And sure, at times they were putting Deshaun Elliott on the moon, 18 yards out, 15 yards out, whatever. But they just present matchup ability. Both of those guys can actually cover. Chuck Clark reminded me a little bit last year in the middle of the year of kind of what Tony Jefferson used to get shit on by a lot of fans, which was, letting up catches against tight ends. But it's like, if they're in phase with their hand at the catch point and the tight end is just dunking on them, tight ends are 6'5", 260. Like they can deal with defensive ends. They can kind of do that. And I thought Chuck Clark still had a really good year. So he's just the epitome of being a solid, consistent player. And that's why, you look at like the way PFF grades, Chuck Clark might not have games that are in the 80s or the 90s or even the 70s at times, but he's just always at least going to give you that 6 out of 10, that 60 out of 100, whatever. And they factor that in. They factor consistency in. So he's the epitome of consistency to me. He never comes off the field, and coaches fucking rave about him. I mean, even Earl Thomas raved about him. He said, like, quote, "I don't know why they brought me in here when they have this guy." And maybe that's a little tongue in cheek. Who knows? Looking back on how the Earl Thomas saga in Baltimore ended, but Chuck Clark, again, not a guy who gets talked about a lot, but a guy who should be talked about more. But it's just tough because he's not like getting picks or any of that glorious shit.
Okay, so you were following the action a little bit there with the press conferences. You were live tweeting it a little bit. I had some stuff going on, so I couldn't. Any other takeaways from those sessions?
From those sessions, I think biggest takeaway is, as Fran comes in hot,
Shouts to the franchise.
Biggest takeaway was Marquise Brown, seems ready to go. Lamar, contract-wise, was like, yeah, I want to – Lamar's contract is like low-key done, I feel like. Like not actually, like there's not actually papers, but like I feel like Lamar and DaCosta and the Ravens brass, Dick Cass and all them are not far away. They all know he wants to stay. They all want him to stay. So I feel like it's like going to be a very easy, smooth thing.
Can I go on a little bit of a tangent here?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm getting tired of the young QB contract situation. They're all going to get one. They are all going to get one. They are
if
all.
If you make the playoffs like once or twice, you're going to fucking get one.
They are all going to get one. There is no hesitancy. There is just certain timelines that they're going to follow, and that maybe there's some strategy that the front office is taking, and maybe some strategy that the representation is taking. And shouts to the franchise at gang joining the screen there. But there's I don't know. It's just like it feels like people digging for a story at times. And like shouts to our guys on the Big Show, Stats, who tweeted at me the other day. He was having a conversation with Brandon, and he tweeted me the question of like, do you think that like the Ravens are kind of slow playing this a little bit because they're a little bit scared or spooked by the whole Joe Flacco experience? And I was like, respectfully, guys, like that really has nothing to do with this. Like Joe Flacco is in the past. It has nothing to do with Lamar Jackson. He's going to get an extension. It's probably going to happen this offseason. And the same thing can be said for Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen. And frankly, they've earned it. Like, what are these teams going to do? These guys are good quarterbacks. They're going to get their extensions just as Lamar is. He said, I want to be here forever. And, it's just kind of, it's not a talking point that interests me too much.
No, really, it's not. I agree with that fully. He's been in the playoffs every year, even regardless of what happens this year. He's going to get an extension ultimately, and it's going to be a lot of money. And we'll, maybe I'll get into the nitty gritty of exactly how many dollars once the timeline gets very close. But yeah, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, they're all going to get extensions, and Josh Rosen isn't. Like,
and it's not that it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, obviously it's an important thing. It's an important development for these franchises and for these players. And you do want to see how the final numbers shake out, because I hate the term team friendly, because none of these contracts are really team friendly, no matter what people try to say. So it's probably not going to be team friendly. You're just finding out, okay, where can they, pinch a penny here? Where can they do X, Y, or Z there? So it's kind of just going to come down to more nitty gritty type stuff than this macro thing, this macro conversation of, is it going to happen or is it not? Like, it's going to happen. So
I would also imagine that the Ravens want to do everything they can to keep Lamar from getting an agent and making it complicated. And I think that means kind of quickly conceding on a lot of things to him. And we had Sarah Ellison on, who worked for the Ravens for a pretty long time. And, what does she say every single time? That the Ravens are, they treat each other as family. Lamar is, the oldest son right now. He's the fucking favorite right now, or the baby boy, whatever you want to call it. He's the baby boy, and they're going to give him whatever he wants. I think they want to keep an agent out of it. And DaCosta's like he's like, yeah, I was down in Florida, getting to get everything together. Like, it's done deal. Other than that, Marquise Brown had a couple of comments, and it was basically just Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. We won a Super Bowl. We won a Super Bowl. We won a Super Bowl. We don't care about touches. We don't care about anything. We want to score points. We want to win a Super Bowl. He literally said, if it's about a Super Bowl, we're about that. If it's not about a Super Bowl, we're not interested. And the thing, again, kind of like Chuck Clark, people talk about Hollywood Brown a lot. And to me, he is maybe it's just because he's a little bit more flashy about it with his posts on Instagram and stuff. But at the same time, of what we've seen, he is the hardest working Raven. Like, that dude works every day, all year. He wants the ball. He wants to win. He wants to work. He loves to work out. He loves fucking ball. He's all about ball. He wants a Super Bowl. I love that about Marquise Brown. I feel like that goes unsaid a lot. He has, like you said, he has no interest in anything that doesn't have to do with him winning a Super Bowl. Who does he hang out with? Lamar. Like, what does he do? Plays fucking Madden and works out and, doesn't do shit other than that.
And shoots hoops and dicks.
What'd you say?
And shoots hoops and dicks.
Yeah, and shoots hoops and dicks. Not dicks and hoops.
Well, we don't. They got a lot of money, popular young guys, but we don't have to go down that road. But yeah, I mean, like, as much shit as he does get, he is a hard worker, clearly, as we saw last offseason. And I think there is some hesitancy regarding making proclamations about him, because I think a lot of people, including us, were bullish on him last offseason for reasons that weren't just the workout videos, but I think they played into it a little bit. But yeah, you can't question his work ethic, and you can't question, as much as people are now kind of having this revisionist history thing, that he's this like shitty wide receiver. You can't question that he's a good player who shows up in big moments.
Especially in big moments. And when they get him the ball, things tend to, go pretty well in the regular season for sure. So it's, I think, just a little underappreciated how much that guy wants to win. And the only time he's ever really gotten shit on was because he was so mad that they didn't win and that he couldn't get the ball to help them win. And it was like, receivers are just built that way. If they don't have any catches and their team loses and they're a first round pedigree receiver, they're going to be fucking pissed about how they lost and how they didn't get the ball. So, you want guys who want the fucking ball. Marquise Brown wants to work and he wants the ball and he wants to win. So I still feel like I am pretty high on Marquise Brown above the general consensus. I was going through just some very basic SIS analytics stuff today, and I did see, the one thing I saw was that they finally rolled out a couple of models that they like, just WAR and a couple different stats they have. Basically, Lamar, Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins are in the top 10 any way you want to cut it for efficiency of people who run the ball. Lamar, passing-wise, last year was about 10th to 16th in pretty much everything. 20th in, I think, points added overall as a passer. So that was maybe the lowest he was as a passer. The Ravens receivers, there was no one in the top 50 of anything. And that included Marquise Brown. Willie Snead was the highest guy in a lot of shit. WAR, points above replacement, points above average, a bunch of stuff, EPA, different metrics. And that stuff's including the quarterback's play, the offensive line's play, and everything. So anything you can think of to say, well, yeah, when you look at all of the different little analytical tools that they have, it is including every variable for the most part. So Ravens receivers weren't good enough last year, and that was Marquise Brown too, but I still like him a lot.
Yeah, I feel like he might even be a better player this year. Maybe not statistically, but he might, in fact, look like it because he's going to have other good players around him, which he did in some ways last year, maybe not at the wide receiver position as much. And it feels like he's going to in this case. And maybe Julio Jones will even be part of that mix. Who could possibly say? But, it just feels like he's going to be set up to not have as much pressure on him this year, which is nice. And I think part of wanting the ball last year was recognizing that he was like maybe one of the only good options at receiver other than like Snead, for example. But,
I mean, he loves when Mark Andrews balls. He gets fired up when Mark Andrews has a big game.
And listen, those two guys down in Arizona, posting thirst traps together and stuff, you can tell they're very good friends. So yeah, you definitely know that he loves that. He loves Lamar having a big game on the ground. And yeah, I'm sure he loves his teammates, but I think he was just kind of a little frustrated. Like, I'm the fucking best wide receiver on this team.
He also had some shitty ass drops last year. There was a pretty big stretch of drops, so that obviously mounts in frustration too.
And they came directly after the Soldier comments, and at least in the case of the Colts game, he had a bad game there. And but I don't know. I think he turned around and finished out the season strong.
Absolutely. That was the most impressive part, is that he turned it around in the playoffs and at the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe we're back to borrowing the same phrase here, but maybe we're back to homeostasis with Marquise a little bit. And yeah, I'm excited to see what we can get from him this year in a little bit more of a low key role, but still with the great talent that he has.
And as of now, I mean, he's still the one who's going to be taking 55, 60, 65% of snaps. He is still wide receiver 1 on this team. Absolutely. Rookies don't just, and he was a rookie who came in and really dominated, but he still was only playing, I think, like in that Dolphins game, I think he was only on the field for like 15 snaps in that week 1. And that had to do with his injury a little bit as well. But most rookies don't just come in and start right away and, get full playing time. That was what was interesting about Tyree Phillips last year. But yeah, those were the only comments. Lamar was just kind of, being a little, he was happy, he was excited, but also, not trying to say too much because it's not the kind of guy he is. So, yeah, that was all from those comments today.
He likes getting in the mix, though. He liked catching the punt and doing all that kind of stuff and having.
He likes when they ask him questions that are like not something that can get anyone in trouble, that he can run with, and he knows there's nothing bad he can say. He'll talk about those for 2 minutes straight.
Exhibit A, the greatest press conference answer of all time, the Harry Potter question that Downing asked.
Yes, exactly.
He felt he was
anything that can't get anyone in trouble, he's running and talking and smiling.
I felt I was back at the Wizards' place. It was pretty dope. Yeah, so is that all we got from the press conferences then?
Yeah, that was everything in note, and obviously it was interesting. The only other last thing seemed like I think they asked Chuck Clark, what changed between saying no one's going to come to OTAs and not. Obviously, that Juwan James situation in Denver, feels like that was a really big catalyst around the league. But then Chuck Clark was like, everybody wants to be great, everybody wants to work, everybody wants to be here, and obviously, Harbaugh is taking note of guys who weren't there, and the guys who weren't there were all just veterans. Calais Campbell, you do not want doing anything right now. Mark Andrews, fine. They love Mark Andrews. He's good to go. Marcus Peters, a couple people. Marcus Peters was real banged up last year, too. I hope he's just chilling. But, yeah, so Harbaugh very happy, and it felt like the Ravens players were pretty happy to be at OTAs.
He was real banged up, and he made potentially the play of the year. So, I mean, let's see what happens in 2021 with him. But I guess other than that, we wanted to round out maybe not necessarily a series that we're doing, but just a kind of little micro series here. One for each side of the ball with the draft, the deep dive. So we started with offense, obviously, last week in our late week episode, and we are circling back now with defense. So defensive deep dive.
Defensive deep dive, we'll just start with the top guy. Odafe Oweh was a pick that at the time we were like, holy shit, we didn't see that coming. The Ravens usually value production so much, but the measurables all there and the traits all there and the on-field stuff all there. Joe Ortiz makes some comments about how Oweh came from Penn State where they don't – number one, Penn State doesn't usually have any high sack individual season players too often. And that also goes hand in hand with what Ortiz said, which is they read, run, then pass rush a lot. And that's what goes into Oweh being such a good run defender, is that he's always prepared for the run. That's how Penn State has him wired and trained. I think a lot of times he was playing what Kirby Smart calls low gear versus high gear. Low gear is not exploding out of your stance and trying to get upfield. Low gear is getting your arms and your hands out ahead of you, processing, making sure that you have vision to your gap and vision around your blocker so that you can find a ball carrier and make a play against the run. Something he did really well is Izaj Alari, I thought, did a good job of, Georgia. Kwity Paye as well. Jalen Phillips wasn't really low gear a lot, but there's people talk about his get off and things like that. People are like, oh, well, he doesn't have the best get off. And it's like, you think he doesn't have good get off? He runs a fucking 4.3. That is get off. 10-yard split, 4.3 40, like at 260 pounds, coming out of a stance and exploding. That is get off. You can talk about snap anticipation and all that good stuff, but I think he's not going to have a problem there. And going back through a little bit of his tape and rewatching what he can do, and it's just, he's going to set the edge, have pursuit speed, and be able to make some hustle plays in the backfield. And what the Ravens want from those outside linebackers is to set the edge, be able to beat a tight end. Every time a tight end is trying to pass block you, you better beat them unless it's Gronk or maybe Kittle. and they love that shit. So he's maybe not going to be that 10, 15 sack guy, but the only guy who's been a 10, 15 sack guy is a fucking Hall of Famer in Terrell Suggs. So that's the kind of caliber player it takes in this Ravens interchangeable, versatile, complex defense. Doomerville, again, another Hall of Fame caliber player. Those are the guys who can go get 15 sacks in this defense. And that's why it feels like they walked away from Ngakoue and walked away from Judon, because they just, I don't know, market inefficiency, all that stuff. But Oweh, I feel like, is going to play a lot and have a big role.
So a lot of inside baseball stuff there in terms of what you'd maybe, the one skill of his that you think is going to translate right away. What do you think that is? Because I know you've mentioned that there are some maybe misconceptions about him. The fact that he actually is a little bit better of a run defender than people give him credit for. The fact that the whole sacks don't matter thing coming out of Wink. What is kind of that one thing you're looking at that in 2021 fans are going to be able to look at tangibly and say, all right, this is what they were picking in the first round?
Well, people love Pernell McPhee. And I think Pernell McPhee is a real embodiment of Ravens football and how physical he can play against the run. And Ravens fans have a really, I feel like, as opposed to other fan bases, like a really high passion for setting the edge. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's because Terrell Suggs was so good at it. And
it's
maybe
just a thing you say too. I think it's a big time buzzword. Like, he can really set the edge. Like,
right. Baltimore, I feel like it specifically is a buzzword.
Yeah, for a defensive team, like you could see that really trickling its way into the bloodstream of the fan base a little bit.
And I think it's that. I think it's the run processing, the length to set the edge, and the eyes, then the pursuit speed. So it's setting the edge or crashing down backside plays. And I think that's something Pernell McPhee does a great job of. So having Oweh, who was good at that in college, very much so, having Pernell McPhee, who loves to take a leadership role. He is not the, learn by doing. He loves to be the guy in the middle of the pregame huddle. He loves to be the one that is coaching up rookies and doing all that stuff. He very vocally is passionate about that because of guys that did that for him early in his career in Baltimore. I think that is a match made in heaven, Pernell McPhee and Odafe Oweh. And I think Ravens fans are really going to like his ability to simply set the fucking edge and make plays against the run. So that is what I think fans can be excited about.
Cool. So good first year, so-so first year, bad first year. I'm assuming you're not expecting bad. He's a first-round pick. What are you kind of expecting from him in year one, maybe production-wise, and also what you see on tape?
I'm curious to see how much he plays. Is it, 50% of snaps? Is it 30% of snaps? That's a really big difference to me. And our team's going to attack him head on in the run game early. Because if he doesn't really get pressure, like, that kind of sucks, which I don't think will be the case. I think he'll be able to get a fair amount of pressure. I would think he would get 30 pressures if he plays a good bit of snaps, like, moderate amount of pressure overall. Is he going to be able to survive getting attacked head on early in the run game? Concepts coming at him. And I think Jalen Ferguson has struggled with that at times, and especially that aspect of holding the edge and playing contain and setting the edge and all of those things. So I think we're going to see, him play like a Raven. I think he fits the mold. I think he fits the mold, and sacks, whatever. I can make predictions, whatever. But I think we see a moderate amount of pressure and a good run defender and someone who is very athletic. And I didn't see a 4.3 player on tape, but I saw a 4.5 player, and that's very fucking fast. Patrick Queen ran a 4.5. Patrick Queen is really fast. So pursuit speed, able to end plays, and maybe go be a kind of alpha tackler. A.J. Brown ran through the fucking defense through all of your, supposed alpha guys, Patrick Queen, Marlon Humphrey, Chuck Clark, Marcus Peters, who, maybe isn't known for tackling, but known for kind of being a, wanting the smoke kind of guy. And Oweh is now a 6'5", 260 predator. And you see some long pursuit from him on tape, and a guy that can go end plays and chase those down. So that's what the Ravens have always been about, is hustle to end plays. And it feels like Oweh is going to bring the ability to simply make tackles and end plays. So that's something I would be excited about as well.
Nice. So second defensive pick is in the third round at number 104. We watched this pick play out together on a live stream, and we were both I think, incredibly surprised by it. I still am a little surprised by it. I've warmed up to it, but that's just kind of a fan thing that you do, is even if you're a little head scratching at a pick in the moment, you warm yourself up to it. Still haven't been able to watch much of this guy. Brandon Stevens, cornerback / free safety, they're going to be playing him at out of SMU. Have you been able to locate much tape on him? Because I couldn't find any.
I've watched about 3 games now total. North Texas. Can't remember what the other 2 were, but I watched some tape, and you see a football player. I mean, you see a big body, and this is what he is loved for by there. Apparently, there's a community, I guess, of analytics-based box score stuff for DBs. And there's a couple guys that are very big into it. I can't even think of the top of their names. I actually just saw one like yesterday talking about it. The reason this little niche of analytics loves him is because his solo tackle percentage of SMU's total defense was like 6% or 8%, apparently very high. And then his pass breakup of SMU's total pass breakups was very high, 28.5%, if I'm not mistaken, mixed with his pro day results. And a lot of people like saying like this is in that formula. It's kind of like people say target share and breakout age and dominator rating for fantasy football, like those similar kinds of things. That makes for an all pro caliber player. And apparently he had like the highest score of whatever the fucking phrase was called, whatever. What I saw on tape was someone who doesn't quite know. He has good hips, but he doesn't know hand placement. He doesn't know transitions. He doesn't know route combinations really well yet, how to kind of play the middle all the time. And that was something that seemed like he improved on. I think he's a boomer bust kind of guy. I think he has a lot of tools, a lot of traits, can be a menace on special teams, and that the Ravens are very confident in his physique and his physical skill set and his hips and his ability to make tackles and be long in coverage, do some certain things. So I feel like he fits their idea of what they want in a corner or a matchup coverage player very well. I was thinking he was going to be a safety when I watched this film a lot, but I would think they would stick with him at outside corner because of his hips and the potential in his ability to transition and stay in phase, because that is a very valuable skill set, and that is what the Ravens value very much. They value man coverage ability and the ability to put corners on an island, clearly, with how much they paid Marlon Humphrey and how much they paid Marcus Peters and how much they love Jimmy Smith over the years. So I would think he gets a pretty prolonged project at outside corner, and maybe, year 3, we see him kind of not really cutting it. And I think if he doesn't hack it at corner, I'd be surprised to see them really want him at safety. They don't usually take corners and put them at safety. That hasn't been a high revenue source of Ravens safeties.
Which is why I'm interested in the fact that when they made the pick, and I think it was the press conference that night, they went down there, and maybe it was Ortiz or Eric or somebody said, yeah, free safety. Like they just kept kind of hammering that home.
I think they said DB when they drafted him.
I think they said safety, or maybe it was on the tweet or something, but somewhere they said free safety with him specifically, I remember. And it's interesting that you mentioned
he played a little bit of safety. It seemed like he played. I know that he played some more snaps there in 2019 than maybe I saw, but I saw a little bit of snaps at safety in 2019. And it was good. He showed range. The ball was thrown up an obvious 9 route and stuff, but
it's also interesting that you mentioned the analytics people loved him, because Matt Miller, who is very much not an analytics guy at all, he's total college tape watching. He, as soon as the pick was made, and Ravens Twitter, myself included to a degree, was kind of freaking out, like, who is this guy? I don't know who this is. Matt Miller immediately tweeted, like, Brandon Stevens is really fucking good. Like, the Ravens know how to do this drafting thing. And he's a guy who's kind of not in that analytics camp at all. So he seemed to like the tape, which it sounds like you did too, to some degree. And it is going to be interesting to see what they do with him with that dichotomy of saying one thing and then maybe you're kind of seeing something else.
I just think that I would be a little surprised for them not to want him to be a boundary corner, because of what he's capable of doing in that role. I think it would just surprise me a little bit. But safety, yeah, I mean, he had some single high stuff, some two high stuff, some middle of the field reads and things. I saw like maybe 15 snaps of that in 2019, 2 games I watched. But seems like he can just kind of fucking cover a little bit and go break passes up, and he's big and long and physical. But he needs a lot of refinement in press, hand placement in press. I saw a couple good he did well on some jams. I got some outside releases where he was able to open his hips up to the boundary, and you want to jam with your outside hand so that you can turn your hips and angle them towards the boundary. Because if you go with your inside, then it kind of locks your hips a little bit.
And it opens you kind of the wrong way and going the other way a little bit.
Yeah. And it allows you to kind of open your hips into an outside release with your outside hand. So I saw that from him. That was nice. But, well, I mean, we'll see.
There's a random pick every year. Tyree Phillips was a random pick in the 3rd round.
Tyree Phillips was a very random pick, and they moved him in positions when he has tons of length, which was interesting. But now he's back at tackle, it seems like.
Yeah, which, so well, hopefully Brandon, maybe they've got a little bit more of a plan in place there.
The thing is, though, like DeShaun Elliott and Chuck Clark are asked to play a lot of man coverage too.
Yeah.
Especially Chuck Clark. So matchup guy. He's big, he's long, he is fast, he has good feet because he was a running back. So,
and you talk about like cover 3, you're also like, if they're ever in a situation where they're running that, like that's essentially just playing corner, but just playing it deeper and also kind of like a safety. So there's maybe like a little bit of, you talk about the hybridization of the 2 different safety roles. There is also a little bit of hybridization probably these days that goes on with corner and safety. You could probably speak more to that than me, but just kind of something that I noticed.
Well, think about it. The Ravens run a lot of cover 1 and a lot of cover 0, and that's man coverage. And that means one guy, if you're in cover 1, is in the middle of the field. And that might be DeShaun. A lot of times it feels like that's DeShaun Elliott. So what is Chuck Clark doing? He's fucking cutting the field in half and covering someone in man coverage. So you might be a safety, but you're going to get asked to cover. And it feels like he's a matchup guy, Marlon Humphrey seems to do really well against bigger, receivers. And Marcus Peters seems to do really well against, the kind of slender finesse type receivers. I don't know, like a John Brown type or something, but you just get some different bodies in that room and can do some interesting things. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, he's a 3rd round pick. He was at the end of the 3rd round. I think there's some potential there. And the Ravens trust their ability to have him go be with Chris Hewitt, who he fucking runs the show a little bit. Like, he is the pass game coordinator for the secondary and the DB's coach or whatever. And when we're at practice and stuff, covering the Ravens, like, he's fucking barking out there. He has a lot of control over practice. So putting him in that room with those guys, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Chuck Clark I was just talking about, clearly very detail-oriented. Shaun Elliott posted a picture today with him showing at Brandon Stevens the ropes. And they're both represented by David Mugata. So, that's a really good room to be in for someone who is kind of new to the position and has a lot of physical ability. And I don't think they're going to have to ask. They're going to ask him to play special teams. And I don't think they're going to ask a lot of him on defense this year, which is great. He's not going to play over Anthony Averett at corner, and he's not going to play over Chuck Clark or DeShaun Elliott at safety. So, yeah.
Cool. So, and I think we could probably be a little bit more confident in it because we also got the patented EDC move, which is the double dip. He circles back on defense in round 5, number 160, pick from the Arizona Cardinals, and he takes Shaun Wade, cornerback out of Ohio State. So another corner.
Another corner. Wade, obviously everyone knows, way better in the slot in 2019. Got beat up a lot in 2020. He had to go cover Devontae Smith, Cornell Powell had his way with him. Dude from Indiana had his way with him a lot. And it's just the outside jab step, outside release fucking destroys him. Like, I don't know if I've seen one corner who gets abused by one release as much as Shaun Wade does by an outside, like, hezzy jab step release. And It was weird in space, but it feels like he's a lot more comfortable over the middle of the field. He's a lot more comfortable in the slots, and he is sticky in man coverage in that slot area. He is a really good tackler. He's a really good open field tackler. He is very aggressive, good length. And obviously, you know, Ohio State liked him a lot. He got a little bit hyped up off of the 2019 year when he was playing with who are the corners? Why can't I think of his name? Lions, Jeffrey Okudah and Damon Arnett. So he was, you know, in that third corner role, and people were kind of anointing him as the next great corner there, and it didn't quite happen, but he's physical. He can play. He can, you know, give smaller slot types some problems in press, and he's going to be, you know, a feisty fucking slot corner, it feels like. He just couldn't deal in isolation. He likes having some help over the middle of the field and some of those things. So I think, again, you know, we're talking about someone who is kind of the opposite of Brandon Stevens, and I think Shaun Wade tweeted after the draft, and he was like, you know, you guys are going to see a whole different beast. You know, I was dealing with family death and injury and a lot of other things that people don't know about. Maybe some of that stuff's true, maybe all of it's true, but you're talking about Brandon Stevens probably being an ascending, learning the position type versus Shaun Wade, who was getting mocked in the top 20 consistently ahead of the 2020 season and then falls all the way to the Ravens all the way down there. So Shaun Wade, I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't end up seeing a lot of time in the slot, especially if Tavon Young, you know, can't stay healthy, which I love. We all love Tavon Young, but it just sucks.
Any specific traits stand out for him to you? You know, kind of, is he a ball hawk? Is he a big hitter? What does he kind of bring to the table in that regard to you?
I think he's going to bring some blitzing prowess. I think, you know, a little bit of everything, a little bit of man coverage ability, a little bit of hitting, a lot of ability to run. I think he's a very good run defending slot corner. He's not a small guy by any means. He hits low. He processes well against the run. And I think, again, the Ravens develop DBs. Everyone wants to talk about what positions the Ravens develop, and it's fucking DBs. They develop DBs. So ultimately, I feel like his strengths are going to be press in the slot in terms of maybe not jamming, but soft shoe press, where he's able to kind of carry some crossing routes and some quick stuff and go make some big tackles and end plays with physicality. And I think you're going to see him playing a lot of special teams, which I think will be good for him. I think that's something he didn't have to do much at Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken, and letting him go be physical. I think he's going to be a good special teams player, and I think he has potential to be a very solid starting nickel eventually.
Cool. So it seems like some good upside there in the 5th round with him, and I think they might be looking at the same thing with another 5th round player that they got at number 171, a pick that we both like in edge, Daelin Hayes out of Notre Dame.
Great pick, great value in my opinion. He just reminds you of, I've said before, the outside linebackers that the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Ravens like. They can cover, they can make plays against the run, and they can beat tight ends as pass rushers. And he's not ever going to be a prolific sack guy, but he can really make plays in coverage. He can really make plays in space, and was asked to be he was team captain for a team captain for Notre Dame, which is a big fucking deal as opposed to, being a team captain from Houston or whatever. Sorry, Houston fans, but he had some shoulder injuries in college and had a lot of run responsibility, had a lot of stack responsibility. Again, not dissimilar from Odafe Oweh, but he has a lot of coverage experience and he shut shit down at the Senior Bowl. I've got to watch him really be a force against tight ends in coverage. And that's a really, really, really interesting skill set. Someone who can set the edge and then maybe, just peel off with a tight end. We don't even really see Tyus Bowser do that. I don't think he's as good in coverage as Tyus Bowser. He would have gone a lot earlier like Tyus Bowser did, but he has an interesting skill set and one that fits the Ravens better than it fits a lot of other teams. Maybe the Cardinals too like that a lot. Those kind of off-ball coverage linebackers, Jordan Hicks, Devondre Campbell, Isaiah Simmons, those types. And they drafted Zaven Collins.
Yeah, there you go. And just kind of that boxy fire hydrant type linebacker that has a higher floor maybe than other 5th-round picks that you're going to get, especially coming to a team and to a system like this. So yeah, impressed by it, and also impressed by, this is definitely a fan thing, maybe a sports talk radio type thing, but just hearing the kid talk and seeing maybe some of his preparation and practice habits. You know, he's doing the drills behind Oweh when it's not even his turn, and kind of getting himself into
stealing a rep.
Yeah, exactly. Stealing reps, taking that, you know, not being intimidated by the fact that you're dealing with a 1st-round pick. It takes some humility as a 21-year-old or whatever it is to say, hey, man.
He's actually really old. I think that's one of the knocks on him. I think he might be 23 or 24.
Well, that might be a knock, but it also...
He just turned 23. He's not that old, but he's older.
Yeah, so, you know, that might be a knock, but that might also be...
A positive.
A positive for a guy that you do want to be that high-floor player, that 5th-round pick that's going to come in and be able to be pro-ready right away and maybe fill like a Jarrett Johnson light type role. So it's going to be interesting. And I think learning from a guy like Oweh and having that humility to say, hey, this kid's younger than me, and I'm going to learn from him, even though we're in the same draft class, and he got picked 5 rounds ahead. It speaks to some really good maturity from him. I've been very impressed by all his interviews, and I'm excited to see him repping the purple and black.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me just stylistically, and I don't think Whitney Merciless covers as much ever really, but he reminds me of Whitney Merciless in kind of build and skill set a little bit. The way he looks rushing the passer. I'm pretty sure Whitney Merciless, might be wrong, pretty sure Whitney Merciless had like an insane junior season production-wise, and that's why he got drafted in, I think, the 2nd round.
Yeah, he was a beast. I always forget about him.
Yeah, he's had a good career for the Texans. That would be in the highest outcomes of what Daelin Hayes can be. Probably, I think Whitney Merciless had like a 12-sack season or something. Let me see. He went to Illinois, Illinois, and he had a 16-sack, 22.5 tackle for loss season. And then he goes ahead and gets drafted in, I believe, the 2nd round, if I'm not mistaken. No, 1st round. Wow. 1st round, pick 26. But they're right about the same size. The way they play the run is pretty similar to me. I'm going to go ahead and guess that Merciless is probably a way better tester than Daelin Hayes, and he gets drafted in the 1st round versus the 5th round. But the thing we might not know is that Hayes I think he has a pretty bad shoulder situation, or did, and was able to come back and play this past year and stay healthy. Let me see. He suffered a shoulder injury 4 games into his senior season and used a medical red shirt. Then he finished his 5th season with 17 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, a pick, and 2 forced fumbles. So, yeah, I would think that would be like the highest outcome of Hayes as a run defender and as a pass rusher would be somewhere like a Whitney Merciless. And if he doesn't stick around, I would think it's because of that shoulder.
If this is a stupid opinion, let me know. But it feels like this is a type of player that would go in the 2nd round in 2008. And the Ravens would have been all over him.
2002.
Yeah, and the Ravens would have been all over him, and he'd have been a really good player. So
he's a 4-3 outside linebacker. But the thing is, no one plays 4-3 or 3-4 like that. It's especially the Ravens. You know, it's hybrid, odd and even fronts, and under fronts and over fronts, and like they run it all. And a lot of it is 5 DBs on the field.
And you talk about like the stuff like college production too. That feels like something that the Ravens have maybe trended away from, and Oweh is maybe a perfect example of that recently. But he, you know, good production in college and just kind of that all-around type player that maybe a little bit of a throwback, and maybe you're speaking to a little bit of devaluation there, but you got him in the 5th round. So it feels like it could be a good
exactly. The NFL is trending away from Sams, and they're trending towards the nickel, replacing the Sam. So at the same time, what's going to happen is that NFL offenses are going to know that, and they're going to start running more heavy personnel because teams don't have as many Sams, and then teams are going to need Sams. The offense jumps, and then the defense has
honestly, Exhibit A. Sorry to cut you off, but like Exhibit A, the Ravens, like what you talk about,
Patriots,
running more heavy stuff. Like in 2019, like that was a big part of why they did what they did, was that they kind of zagged a little bit, which that's a little bit of an overdone phrase at this point with them. But
and now I'm thinking the Chiefs are going to be running some heavier personnel and some more man gap stuff with that offensive line that they got, in bringing in Thuney and Orlando Brown, who are, you know, man gap scheme fellas. And I think they don't love their receiving core quite that much. And they like those, you know, 2 tight end sets and things. And it's a cyclical league.
It certainly is. And like I said, I mean, the Ravens were kind of at the forefront of zagging back towards the run, and there've certainly been some issues with that. They need to invest in the pass a little bit more, and they've made that a priority this offseason clearly. So that's been nice to see. But just getting back to that original point, it feels like they got some value out of Daelin Hayes because of that. So it's nice.
Yes, and he's going to be the backup Sam to Bowser. So that is going to be his primary role. He's going to play on special teams. And I think, I think we'll see him have like a Chris Board type role where he has some packages and some certain things that he's going to play on and maybe sneaks in 200 snaps. I don't think that would surprise very many people, but I mean, I like Oweh. I like Oweh a lot, but I think Daelin Hayes of all these defensive picks might be my favorite because I feel like he's just a pro, and I feel like you said, he has a skill set that maybe is not as desired necessarily, but it's very practical and is going to translate into him if he can stay healthy. I mentioned that shoulder injury, being a productive player for a long time.
Absolutely. So is that all we got on the defensive deep dive?
That is all we got. So, I mean, and I'm looking at his RAS, and it's, it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. 7.93 as a DN. Let me see, as a outside linebacker or as a linebacker. It's not letting me, but oh well. Oh, there we go. All right. Great radio. Yeah, 7.53. He's a big ass linebacker and can do some stuff. So yeah, I like him a lot. And I don't think we're going to see a ton out of, this rookie defensive class this year, but it felt like it was a lot of depth and a lot of guys that are going to be needed in the coming seasons, ultimately.
Absolutely. So is that all we got for the show today, bud?
Yeah, let's end it.
Cool. So before we get out of here, I wanted to quickly touch on Monday's podcast, which is going to be something a little bit different, which if you were following the social feeds today, you noticed that we officially announced our evergreen content for this summer, which is going to be titled Forgotten Dynasty, an oral history.
I honestly should have started with that. I'm kind of pissed that we didn't.
No, it's okay. I kind of wanted to close with it anyway. So closing it out with that, and Forgotten Dynasty, an oral history of the Baltimore Colts, produced by your boy. A little brainchild of mine for the last couple of years. Been kicking the idea around, and it was kind of maybe COVID, maybe a little bit before that. I kind of started to make some tangible movements towards putting something together. It took on many different forms over the life of the production, including writing up different scripts, throwing scripts in the trash, doing a lot of different shit. I'm very meticulous with this kind of stuff, so it's a little bit of a nerve-wracking experience putting it all together and kind of finally coming out with it. But it's interesting to finally be talking about it because it's been something that has been living in my head since maybe even before the podcast. Like I maybe wanted to do something with Baltimore.
It's been pretty long. It's been I would say the shortest it could have been in your head for was like 3 months into us starting this podcast.
Yeah, I'd been talking about it even at that time. I might have wanted to do something for the site prior to having started the podcast. I think it's just
always kind of interested you.
Yeah, it definitely has. So I think there were, like I said, there were different iterations that it took on, but I think waiting on it was probably a good move because I wound up putting together maybe the best version of a script that I could. I'm actually still kind of working on finishing up the script. It's pretty long, so I've got some time in that respect because I have a couple episodes in the hopper. So going to be jumping on that and getting it done. It features.
What are we looking at? 5 episodes?
I think it's either going to be 5 or 6. Hopefully not more than 6 because the episodes are pretty long. Just so you guys know, they're about 2 hours each. So if you've got to divide them up in time or whatever, or you want to save them and binge them, I'm not going to judge you on your listening habits to this because it's a unique thing. It's unlike anything we've ever done. It's narrative driven, features interviews with 3 different guys that I conducted. Jack Gilden, who's an author of the book Collision of Wills, which is a really, really good read. I'd definitely recommend it, on Johnny Unitas and Don Shula's relationship, which was really, really fractured.
It'd be a great summer beach read.
Oh, yeah, big time. So if you're driving back from the beach this coming Monday and you need something to flick on, the first episode is running right around 2 hours, so you could flick that on. And that book was kind of a catalyst in me kind of taking a different approach to what I had been doing, which is kind of making it more about the human drama. So I actually got in touch with Jack, who wrote that book, and he features heavily in it. I talked with him for like an hour and a half. So plenty of his voice is in it. I also got in touch with Bill Curry, who was a famous coach, but he actually also played for the Colts at center from 1967 to 1972. So spoiler alert, he was actually on one of their Super Bowl teams and also on one of their not so great Super Bowl teams. So he had a good relationship with Unitas and Shula, and also Keith Mills, who's a friend of the program. He was there for all the Irsay stuff in the 70s and 80s. So he's going to feature in it a little bit as well. And it's just been a long, arduous, and fun process. And it's cool. I've got to, go down memory lane of stuff that I actually didn't experience, which is a cool thing. And I don't know what my interest in it was necessarily, but when I started jumping into it, I realized it was more interesting than I probably ever could have expected. There was a lot of crazy shit that went down, a lot of cool stuff that I've come across here. Actually just got this in the mail the other day, so I got to look it over. Little Burt Jones Sports Illustrated cover from, I think, 1976.
I think I've seen that cover on the internet.
Yeah, it was in the trailer, so that might have been where. But it's just something that I've, like I said, been sorry to ramble here, but it's been rattling around in my head for a long time. I'm pretty proud of the final product, or what's going to be the final product here, and I hope you guys are excited for it.
I'm about halfway done listening to the first episode, and it is just going to be such A1 evergreen content. Like what I love. Obviously, Jake and I both have been listening to Pardon My Take on and off for years and all that stuff. And whenever they have evergreen summer shit, it is the best when you're traveling in the summer. So I think it is perfect, and it's been really enjoyable to listen to. And it's easy listening, and it incites you to go do a ton of research on the Baltimore Colts and look deeper into some of these situations that Jake brings up. And there's tons of resources that he mentions and books to read and various places and interviews and moments on NFL films and things like that. So it's a lot of cool stuff to go look up. And I think it's just really cool that you're inspiring us to take a look at a football town. I mean, basically, when was it? What are the exact years of the Colts in Baltimore through them leaving?
So they had a team in what was called the AAFC in the 40s, and then that league folded, and then they came back under new ownership via a dead NFL franchise in, I believe, 1951. So, or maybe it was.
And then they left in the 70s. So it's like basically almost a 50% split of this football town.
Yeah. So they left in 84 was the final year. So I think,
or 84, pardon me.
I think you're fine. I think it was 53 to 84. Maybe I definitely should know this off the top of my head.
So at this point, But so at this point, the Ravens are kind of creeping up towards being half of the actual history of the city of Baltimore, and the Colts are actually like 62% of that right now. So I think it's fun, especially someone who spends a lot of time in Baltimore myself and has lived there and probably am moving back there soon, and thinking about that historical aspect of it and what the city was like back then as this, world center port and all that good stuff. And it's just nice to think of that, and it just has some cool feelings to think about like what our grandparents were doing and all that good stuff. My pop-op was the Colts orthopedic surgeon at one point. So it's like a lot of stuff he was telling me, he passed when I was pretty young, but a lot of stories and stuff he'd be telling me about Artie Donovan and all these guys and stuff. And it's like Raymond Berry and everyone. And I feel like there's a lot of people who have those grandparents, and it was such a meaningful thing to them. So I'm really happy that you're bringing it into our lives and our listeners' lives so that we can take some pride in it a little bit, even though it ended in a very shitty way that everyone knows. But it was not that way, for the majority of the franchise in Baltimore.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad to do it because I feel like it's kind of fading away a little bit to an extent because the team left and they still remain the Colts, and so they take a lot of that stuff with them, whether directly or not. It's kind of hard for young Baltimore fans to say I'm really invested in this from a young age, and my parents told me all about this stuff because, well, no, they left the town and they're another team now, or they play for another city now. And
it'd be like if the Ravens were still the Browns.
Yeah, and it's like, and we have the Ravens now. So it's like there's not really much need, or maybe I shouldn't say need, but there's maybe not much desire for younger fans to go back and look that stuff up. But when I tell you it's an
Johnny Unitas is the fucking goat of all goats of really the NFL, arguably, and also Baltimore.
Yeah, as I say in like the podcast, and as like more learned, smarter people than me say in the podcast, like he set the template for what a quarterback became. Like Tom Brady, maybe he is the GOAT, but like he wouldn't have been that without Johnny Unitas. He set the template.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's a fun kind of light listen. It is. Some of the episodes are a little on the longer side, obviously, but like I said, you can consume it literally however you want. And get at me on Twitter at Jake Luke with your thoughts. I've already got plenty of nice messages from people who sound pretty excited for it. So if you're one of them and you feel like chopping it up with me, just let me know. And I'm always happy to talk.
Well, I love it. I'm very proud of you and your effort. And, like Jake said, he's been looking forward to this for quite some time, and he's been working on it for quite some time. So it's a great feeling for you. And I know that nervous feeling you're talking about releasing your little baby project, your sweet little baby that you've been fostering and loving in your nightly hours and the hours that you have for yourself. Always spend so much time on this podcast and everything and in our own personal work and then personal lives. So I'm very proud of the effort. I am excited to keep listening myself, and we'll have a nice, this is probably going to really carry us through June a lot. And maybe that'll kind of be our June content for the most part. And we'll pop in and do some episodes like this. And, as news comes, we'll be there, of course. But throughout June, we're going to be vacationing ourselves and things, but we'll still be here. And that's going to be our horse of our content, so to speak.
Nice pun there. That's kind of the reason why we held off until now was because everyone kind of knows, and we've been doing the podcast for 2 years at this point. So we know what the June, early July calendar can look like for the NFL. Not a whole lot going on. So I think it kind of falls right into that sweet spot for you guys. And I hope it does provide some nice listening. And like you said, we will be still doing the weekly late episodes. So you're still going to be getting 2 episodes per week. We're going to be doing the conversational show, opening the mailbag up, maybe doing some other fun stuff. But for the time being, the early week episodes is going to be Forgotten Dynasty in the regular podcast feed. So that's what the next couple of weeks of content are looking like for us. Hope you guys are excited, and hope you're excited to enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. I know we're going to. I'm heading down the ocean. Got both shots in my arm, fully vaccinated. Excited to maybe celebrate America and hopefully the world getting back to normal a little bit here. And I know you have got some plans yourself in the hopper here.
Yep, I'll be traveling for a little vacation myself. Flying Friday, first flight in a long ass time, and coming back Monday. So excited about that. Excited about maybe this, like you said, maybe this might be the celebration of the world. I think Biden said, about 50% of American adults are vaccinated at this point. So all good things. And we'll be here. I can't remember what I just had a thought that completely slipped my mind before you mentioned that. But ultimately, yeah, we're excited for things to come. And God damn it, what was I going to say? It's pissing me off. Whatever. Take us out of here.
All right. Well, unless you remember that before I finish landing the plane here, appreciate you guys listening. As always, hope you had yourselves a fun week and have yourself a really fun holiday weekend here. Before we get you out of here, wanted to let you know to go ahead and leave us those 5-star reviews on iTunes. We've had a steady trickle in. And also, if you want to leave a 4-star review. And
this is what I was going to say. There we go. Perfect. Yes. If you are a listener and you have a parent or a grandparent who was a fucking Colts fan, tell them about Jake's podcast. Tell them about Forgotten Dynasty. If there's someone who, is enough tech capable to listen to podcasts, a lot of older folks do now at this point that are maybe, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever. So share it with your parents. It would be a lot of fun. There's cool interviews on there. So share it with the older folks, and hopefully they'll enjoy it very, very much. Jake is much more classy about that than we are about, this version of the podcast. So it's, pretty, at least to the point I'm in, it's pretty profanity free and a little different vibe than what we have. I don't know about the rest of it, but
yeah, no, it's definitely, I put on my NPR voice to the best of my ability, and the script is very straightforward. I don't know how much of my writing you've read, but I'm a pretty formal writer, I think. And I can keep the content informal, but my mom was an English teacher. I'm probably the reason I'm doing this is because I was a good writer growing up. So I think the writing is it's pretty solid. There's no profanity really. I mean, there's a little bit, but not much. And it's mostly just quotes from old players and stuff. Like Unitas saying,
our generation curses anyway, but some people are hoity-toity, and it's not quite as fuckboy as our podcast is.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much a different tone in that regard. So if there's any concerns from you, don't worry about that. You can show it to your family. Shout out to your families if they do want to listen to it. And go ahead and share it with some of your older relatives if you think they might have some interest. I've already had plenty of people, both in that demographic, that have reached out to me and thanked me already without even having heard an episode, which is kind of sick. And people that say that they're going to be passing it along to their dad or whoever else. So if you're one of those people so inclined, I'd be happy to hear your story. Shoot it to us at Podcast Beatdown on Twitter. I am at Jake Luke. That is Louque. Spencer is at Ravens for Dummies. You can leave it in an iTunes review. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star and let us know in there. Or let us know on Instagram at Baltimore_Beatdown. Appreciate you guys listening. And to finally get us out of here.
See ya.
Arrivederci.
Gorlami. Gorlami.
Arrivederci. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.